It was a sweltering July afternoon in 1945 when Emily James and Clara, three cousins from a quiet Pennsylvania town, set out to play near the old Miller farmhouse. The house had been abandoned for years, its peeling paint and broken windows giving it a haunted look, and the townspeople often warned children to stay away. But the cousins were adventurous, and curiosity had always gotten the better of them. That afternoon, they promised their parents they would stay close to the edge of the woods, yet they were never seen again. The initial search was frantic and desperate. Parents, neighbors, and local police combed the surrounding fields, barns, and dense woods, calling the children's names until their voices grew hoarse. The townsfolk lit torches and formed search parties, but it was as if the children had simply vanished into thin air. There were no footprints leading away, no signs of struggle, nothing to suggest where they might have gone. The eerie silence of the abandoned farmhouse seemed to mock the frantic cries echoing across the fields. Rumors began to circulate almost immediately. Some whispered that the Miller house was cursed, claiming they had seen shadows moving behind boarded up windows and strange flickers of light at night. Others suggested the children had wandered too far into the woods and gotten lost, or worse. A few older townsfolk remembered tales of hidden tunnels beneath the farmhouse, stories passed down from generation to generation, and many feared that the children had stumbled into something far beyond their understanding. The media took notice, and soon newspapers from neighboring towns were printing headlines about the vanishing of the three cousins. Yet even with widespread attention, no leads emerged. The police questioned everyone in the town, but witnesses' memories were hazy, and strange inconsistencies only deepened the mystery. Some claimed to have seen the children near the edge of the woods that morning, while others swore they had glimpsed them inside the Miller house itself, though no one dared enter the decrepit building. As days turned into weeks, the community's fear intensified. Parents kept their children close, doors remained locked, and the town seemed to shrink in on itself. Every creak in the old floorboards, every rustle in the bushes, sparked whispers and speculation. The cousins' disappearance became the defining event of that summer, a chilling reminder that even in a small, peaceful town, darkness could creep in silently and sometimes vanish without a trace. After the disappearance of Emily James and Clara, their family retreated into a world of quiet despair. They rarely spoke of the children outside the house, and when neighbors or relatives inquired, they offered only polite smiles and vague reassurances. Over time, the town began to notice a strange, heavy air whenever the family was around. People whispered that something more sinister might have happened, but fear and respect for the grieving family kept most from asking too many questions. The cousins' empty beds became a silent testament to the unknown, and slowly, the town's collective curiosity turned into uneasy acceptance. Inside the family home, the silence was even more pronounced. Every creaking floorboard or distant noise from the abandoned Miller house sent shivers through the adults. Conversations about the missing children were carefully avoided, as though even uttering their names aloud could invite misfortune. The cousins' bedrooms were preserved exactly as they had been left that fateful day. Emily's doll neatly tucked in the corner, James' toy truck frozen mid-play, and Clara's sketchbooks stacked on her desk. These frozen snapshots of life added a haunting weight to the house, a constant reminder of what had been lost. Despite their grief, There were moments when tension between family members flared. Some wanted to press the authorities for more answers, while others insisted on leaving the past buried. Arguments were hushed quickly, not because the disputes weren't fierce, but because everyone feared that raising the topic might summon trouble. As the years went on, the family's silence became a protective shield, keeping painful memories and perhaps dark secrets locked safely inside the walls of their home. Neighbors began reporting strange occurrences around the house, lights flickering at odd hours, whispers in the yard when no one was outside, and glimpses of figures in the windows that didn't belong to anyone living there. Some claimed to hear laughter, childlike, high-pitched, and eerie, echoing from empty rooms. But whenever anyone tried to confront the family or investigate further, they were met with stone, cold denial, or an insistence that nothing unusual ever happened here. The town, already haunted by the loss of the cousins, began to sense that there was more than just grief at play. Over decades, the cousins' disappearance became a story people spoke of in hushed tones, a mystery wrapped in fear and suspicion. Visitors to the town were often warned to avoid the family home, as though the very property itself were alive with secrets. And while life continued around them, the family maintained a wall of silence that no one dared breach, leaving generations of townsfolk to speculate about what had really happened behind those closed doors. Every unanswered question, every denied rumor, only made the mystery grow darker, as if the truth itself were lurking, waiting to be uncovered. 78 years after the disappearance, the Miller family descendants were finally clearing out the old farmhouse, a task long avoided due to superstition and fear of the past. The house had fallen into disrepair over the decades. Dust coated every surface, cobwebs stretched across corners, and the floorboards groaned under even the lightest footsteps. As the family moved through the creaking hallways, sorting decades of forgotten belongings, they approached the attic with a mix of trepidation and curiosity. Few had dared to enter this room in years, and those who had returned with uneasy stories of shadows, cold drafts, and a sense of being watched. The attic was a time capsule. Stacks of yellowed newspapers, broken furniture, and boxes of old clothes filled every corner. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the roof, casting jagged beams across the dust-choked floor. Amid the clutter, the youngest Miller heir spotted a small, rusted metal box tucked behind a pile of moth-eaten blankets. It was heavy and locked, but somehow the key had been left nearby, as if waiting for someone to find it. The moment the box was opened, a wave of apprehension washed over the family. The air seemed heavier, almost charged, as though the attic itself recognized the secret about to be revealed. Inside the box lay a collection of old photo rolls, neatly bundled with fraying ribbons. Most were ordinary snapshots of family gatherings and holidays, but one roll was different, darker, almost ominous in appearance. The photographs had never been developed, and the film smelled faintly of age and neglect. Carefully, the family set up an old projector and began examining the images. At first, they were met with familiar faces and ordinary scenes, but then the pictures began to reveal something far more disturbing. Emily James and Clara, smiling and seemingly safe, yet with subtle, unsettling details lurking in the backgrounds, faint shadows, unusual angles, and the unmistakable outline of a partially hidden trapdoor in one corner of the farmhouse. As each photo was revealed, the sense of dread in the room grew. The cousins' presence in the photographs seemed impossible. How could they appear in the farmhouse years after their disappearance? The family began to realize that these images were not just snapshots, but clues carefully preserved, possibly left behind by someone with knowledge of the long-buried truth. Every frame seemed to whisper a question. Who took these photos? Why were they hidden? And most chilling of all, what else might the attic still conceal? The discovery sparked a mixture of fear and determination among the Miller descendants. For decades, the attic had been silent, a dusty relic of the past. Now it seemed alive with secrets, almost as if the house itself had been waiting for the moment the truth might finally be uncovered. Each photograph was examined again and again, revealing more hidden details with every viewing. What had been forgotten for nearly 8 decades was suddenly brought into sharp focus, hinting at a dark, long-hidden story that was only beginning to surface. As the photo roll developed, the Miller descendants were stunned by what they saw. At first, the images appeared innocuous. Emily, James, and Clara smiling, playing in what looked like a normal afternoon in the farmhouse. But the more they studied the frames, the more unsettling details began to emerge. In the corner of one image, a shadowy figure loomed, partially hidden behind a doorway, watching the children intently. Another frame captured the cousins near a wall, behind which a faint outline of a hatch or trapdoor could be discerned. Something that had never been mentioned in any of the town's legends or family stories. The shadows in the photographs were unlike any ordinary trick of light. They seemed deliberate, almost as if the photographer had intentionally captured something meant to be discovered later. In one particularly chilling shot, Clara appeared to glance over her shoulder, her expression frozen in what looked like a mixture of fear and understanding, as though she knew someone was watching her from the darkness. Each photo told a silent story, and with every new detail, the family realized that the images were more than simple memories. They were breadcrumbs left behind to reveal a truth long hidden. Among the most disturbing images was a photograph showing the cousins gathered around the trapdoor, with objects scattered near it: old toys, a torn notebook, and what looked like a small, intricately carved box. In the background, an adult figure could be seen, face obscured by shadow, holding something that glinted faintly in the dim light. The children appeared unaware of the figure's presence, yet the tension in the image was palpable. It was clear that these photos were not just casual snapshots. They were documenting something secret, something deliberate, and possibly dangerous. The family began to notice patterns in the shadows and angles of the images. Certain corners of the room always appeared darkened. Others always contained subtle hints of hidden objects or pathways. It was as though the photographer had been meticulous, recording every small detail for someone to find decades later. Whispers started to fill the room, half in disbelief, half in fear, as the descendants speculated about what might lie beneath the trapdoor, or who had been responsible for hiding the cousins in the first place. The farmhouse that had once seemed abandoned now felt alive with unanswered questions. By the time the last frame was examined, it had become clear that the photographs were a key, a map to a long-buried secret. The evidence within them pointed to a reality far more sinister than anyone had imagined. The cousins had not simply vanished. They had been deliberately hidden, and the photographs themselves were left as a silent confession, waiting for the right person decades later to piece together the truth. The air in the attic grew heavier with every revelation, as though the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move to unlock the story that had been buried for 78 years. Following the unsettling details in the photographs, the Miller descendants felt an undeniable pull to investigate the farmhouse further. Guided by the images, they began examining areas of the attic they had never thought to inspect. Behind old cupboards, beneath dusty tarps, and along walls that had seemed solid for decades. Every creak of the floorboards underfoot, every shifting shadow cast by the flickering sunlight through the roof cracks, seemed amplified, as though the house itself were alert to their presence. The photographs had become a map, pointing them toward a hidden truth that had been carefully concealed for nearly 8 decades. Their search led them to a corner of the attic that had long been dismissed as just another storage space. The photos had shown a subtle indentation in the wall, almost imperceptible, but now it was clear that the panel was movable. With cautious hands and racing hearts, they pressed against the wall, and after several attempts, it shuddered and swung open to reveal a narrow, dust-choked passage. The air inside smelled of decay, old wood, and something faintly metallic. A chill ran down their spines, the kind that made every hair on the back of their necks stand on end, as they realized they had found a secret the family had been hiding for generations. The narrow passage led to a small room that had been meticulously sealed. Inside, time seemed to have stood still. The room was filled with old furniture, children's toys, and personal belongings, items that unmistakably belonged to Emily, James, and Clara. A small rocking chair sat eerily in the center, moving slightly as if disturbed by a phantom hand. There were sketches scattered across the floor, half-finished drawings, and a tiny bed neatly made, untouched for decades. The presence of these belongings made it clear that the children had not wandered away or been lost. They had been deliberately hidden. As they explored further, the descendants noticed subtle signs of habitation. Faint markings on the walls, footprints preserved in decades of dust, and small storage boxes with initials matching the children's names. Each discovery raised more questions than answers. Who had placed the children here? How long had they remained hidden? And most importantly, why had no one ever come looking beyond the obvious? The house itself seemed to whisper secrets, creaking and groaning as though urging them to uncover more, to dig deeper into the history that had been intentionally concealed. The gravity of the discovery weighed heavily on the family. The room, once invisible, now stood as an undeniable testament to a dark secret kept for generations. Every item, every detail, hinted at a story that had been carefully erased from memory, yet preserved in silence. The photographs had led them here, but the hidden room offered evidence far more tangible and haunting. The cousins had been alive, nearby, and deliberately hidden, leaving a mystery that demanded answers. And while the room revealed long-hidden truths, it also suggested that even greater revelations might lie just beyond their understanding, waiting to be uncovered. Once the hidden room was discovered, authorities were called in to investigate, and the decades-old mystery began to unravel. Old documents, letters, and ledgers found tucked away in the farmhouse revealed shocking connections. It appeared that several prominent members of the town, people who had been respected and trusted for generations, had orchestrated the cousins' disappearance. Motives ranged from jealousy over inheritance to petty family rivalries, and the carefully documented photographs had been left behind as a silent confession. meant to be discovered only when the timing was right. As the investigation deepened, historians and forensic experts began piecing together the events of that fateful summer in 1945. The cousins had not vanished randomly. They had been deliberately hidden within the farmhouse by those they trusted most. The evidence suggested meticulous planning. False trails were created, neighborhood searches were subtly misdirected, and the family had been coerced into silence. Even old police reports contained subtle anomalies, as if those investigating at the time had been influenced or misled, leaving behind just enough information to mask the truth while preventing discovery. The most chilling revelation came from a set of letters found behind the false wall in the attic. Written in careful, looping handwriting, the letters described a plan to hide the children indefinitely to protect family fortunes and control over property. Names of those involved, some long deceased, were recorded alongside detailed instructions for keeping the secret. What shocked the investigators most was the cold, almost clinical tone. These were not acts of panic or desperation. They were deliberate, calculated, and intended to last decades. Each page seemed to echo with the voices of those who had manipulated the lives of innocent children for their own gain. The town itself reacted with disbelief as news of the cover-up spread. Descendants of those implicated were confronted with the grim reality of their ancestors' actions, and the community struggled to reconcile the image of a quiet, tight-knit town with the decades-long deception that had unfolded under their noses. Stories of strange sightings and whispered rumors that had circulated for generations suddenly made sense. The shadows in the photographs, the silence of the family, and the hidden room all pointed to one undeniable truth: the cousins had been deliberately erased from public knowledge, hidden away by those who believed no one would ever uncover the story. Investigators began cross-referencing the newly discovered documents with old census records, property deeds, and newspaper clippings, and the evidence formed a damning mosaic of betrayal. Every photograph, every artifact in the hidden room was a piece of the puzzle, revealing a level of premeditation that few could have imagined. The once simple mystery of three missing cousins had transformed into a tale of greed, deception, and manipulation, preserved in silence for nearly 8 decades. Each new piece of evidence, uncovered, only raised more questions. How many knew of the secret and chose to remain silent? And what other truths, still buried, might finally see the light? With the attic's hidden room uncovered in decades, old evidence laid bare, the Miller descendants and authorities faced the monumental task of unraveling nearly 8 decades of deception. Even though most of the original perpetrators had long since passed away, their descendants were now implicated, and the town grappled with the shocking reality that the children's fate had been controlled by those they trusted most. The discovery reignited public outrage, and historians, journalists, and local officials descended on the small Pennsylvania town to document the revelations and preserve what remained of the evidence. Court proceedings and civil inquiries were launched not only to acknowledge the wrongs done to Emily, James, and Clara, but also to confront the families who had perpetuated the silence. Descendants who had grown up unaware of their ancestors' actions were forced to face uncomfortable truths about wealth, influence, and power. The courtroom hearings were intense and emotional. Testimonies, long hidden letters, and forensic analyses painted a chilling portrait of deliberate deception and cold calculation. Even after nearly 80 years, The weight of responsibility lingered heavily in the air, as if the past refused to be forgotten. Meanwhile, the community struggled to reconcile with the reality of what had occurred. Generations of residents had lived with whispered rumors and unexplained shadows, never knowing the truth. Churches, local schools, and public spaces had unknowingly sheltered memories of the cousins' absence, and the revelation sparked a wave of collective reflection. Town meetings and memorial services were held, with survivors and descendants sharing stories, grief, and questions that had remained unanswered for decades. The air of mystery that had haunted the town for so long began to shift into a tangible reckoning, but the sense of unease remained. The discovery also brought a bittersweet closure for the Miller descendants. While justice could never truly restore the lost years of Emily, James, and Clara, it at least gave the family the truth they had long been denied. The photographs, the hidden room, and the meticulous records left by the perpetrators had finally illuminated the full scope of the conspiracy. Each revelation sparked a mixture of grief, relief, and disbelief as the descendants pieced together the story that had been intentionally obscured for generations. The house, once a place of fear and silence, now stood as a repository of history, both tragic and revealing. Even as legal proceedings concluded and media coverage waned, lingering questions haunted the town. Who else might have known and chosen to remain silent? Were there other hidden clues yet to be discovered within the farmhouse or its surrounding property? And most hauntingly, what became of the cousins in the days immediately following their disappearance before they were hidden? The story of Emily James and Clara, though partially revealed, remained a chilling reminder that secrets, no matter how carefully concealed, have a way of surfacing, even after nearly 80 years. As the dust settled and the attic's secrets were finally brought to light, one thing became clear: the story of Emily James and Clara was more than just a tale of vanished children. It was a story of hidden truths, of choices made in shadows, and of the lengths some will go to protect their own secrets. The photographs, the hidden room, the letters, they all whispered a warning across generations. No secret, no matter how carefully buried, can stay hidden forever. Even now, decades later, the farmhouse stands silent, watching, as if guarding the memories of those 3 innocent lives. And though justice was sought and the truth finally uncovered, the echoes of the past linger in every creaking floorboard, every shadowed corner, and every photograph left behind. Some questions may never be fully answered, and some mysteries may forever remain just out of reach. But one thing is certain: the courage to uncover the truth, even after 78 years, has ensured that Emily James and Clara will never be forgotten. Their story serves as a chilling reminder that the past has a way of catching up with the present, and that the secrets we keep can sometimes speak louder than the voices of those who are gone.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.